The cold came first, creeping through the cracks of the small log cabin like a living thing. Then came the silence, so deep it pressed against the ears. The lone Apache stirred under his wool blanket, half dreaming, half listening. He had learned long ago that silence could mean safety or death. His hand moved by habit toward the knife near his bed. Before his eyes fully opened, he felt warmth that did not belong to the fire dying in the hearth. It was close, human close. His breath caught as he opened his eyes. A woman lay beside him. For a heartbeat, he did not move. The old boards beneath the bed did not creak. The wind outside paused as if waiting. She was wrapped in part of his blanket, her dark hair spread across the rough pillow like spilled ink. Her face was calm but tired, marked by dust and travel. She was Apache. That much was clear in the lines of her cheek and the quiet strength of her posture even in sleep. She was grown, not a child, and yet there was something vulnerable in the way her hand rested near her chest as if still guarding something precious. The man's mind raced, but his body stayed still. He had lived alone for many seasons, far from the main trails and even farther from his own people. No one came to his cabin without reason. No one entered without being heard. And no one ever shared his bed. Outside, the first pale light of dawn began to stretch across the hills. The land was old and watchful, just like him. The smell of sage and cold earth filled the room. He studied her carefully, the way he would study a river before crossing. There were no weapons in her hands, no blood on the blanket, but there were signs of a hard journey. Her moccasins sat by the door, worn thin. A tear ran along the seam of her sleeve, poorly stitched in haste. He remembered the night before in pieces. The long walk back from the ridge, the sky heavy with clouds, the sound of distant thunder that never came close. He remembered setting the trap, checking the fire, and eating in silence. He remembered thinking of the past, of the old days when the campfires were many and laughter traveled far into the dark. He did not remember opening the door to anyone. She shifted slightly, and his muscles tightened. Her eyes did not open, but her breathing changed, growing shallow, then steady again. She was exhausted. Whatever had brought her here had taken more from her than sleep. The man eased himself upright, careful not to wake her. His joints ached as they always did in the cold, reminders of years spent riding, hunting, and fighting when fighting was forced upon him. He had once been known as a skilled tracker, a man who could read the ground like a story. Now he was known to no one. That had been the point. He pulled the blanket higher around her shoulders, an instinct older than thought. The fire had almost gone out. He stood and feted a piece of dry wood. The flames caught slowly, throwing soft light across the room. The woman's face glowed warm in that light, and he felt a pull in his chest he did not welcome. Attachment was a dangerous thing. It led to loss. As the fire grew, he took in the rest of the cabin. Nothing was disturbed. His supplies were where he left them. The door was barred from the inside, just as he always secured it. That troubled him more than any sign of a struggle would have. It meant she had been inside before he slept, or that he had let her in himself. Memories stirred, faint and unclear. A sound at the door, a voice low and urgent, carried by the wind. He remembered standing, knife in hand, his heart steady. He remembered seeing a shape collapse against the door frame. After that, nothing but darkness. He looked at her again, and understanding began to take shape. She had come seeking help. She had trusted him, or perhaps she had no other choice. In the old ways, help was not refused lightly. Still, there were reasons he had chosen to live apart. Old conflicts had long shadows. Old enemies did not forget. She opened her eyes then. They were dark and sharp, even heavy with sleep. For a moment she looked afraid, and then she saw him and did not scream. That alone told him much. She drew herself up slightly, pulling the blanket closer, her gaze never leaving his face. "You are awake," she said softly. Her voice was steady, though there was a tightness beneath it. He nodded once. Words felt heavy in the room. "You came in the night," he said at last. She nodded in return. "I did. You were hurt. Not badly. Enough to fall at my door." A faint smile touched her lips, but it did not reach her eyes. "Enough." Silence settled again, thick but not hostile. The fire cracked softly. Outside, a bird called, testing the morning. He waited, giving her space. In his life, he had learned that people spoke when they were ready, not when pressed. "I did not mean to be in your bed," she said after a while. "You were burning with fever. I thought you would die if I did not keep you warm." He blinked, surprised. He had survived worse than fever, but the thought of someone watching over him through the night stirred something long buried. "You stayed." "Yes." "Why?" She hesitated, and in that pause he felt the weight of what was coming. "Because I was told you still lived here. Because I was told you were a man who remembered the old ways. And because there is trouble moving through this land and it is following me." That last part hung between them like a drawn bow. He sat down on the edge of the bed, careful to keep his distance. "Trouble has always moved through this land. This is different," she said. "Men with hard eyes and louder guns. They do not ask before they take." He felt a familiar tightening in his chest. He had seen those men before, cutting paths where they did not belong, leaving fear behind them like tracks in mud. He had turned away from such things, telling himself he was done with all that. "What do you want from me?" he asked. She met his gaze without flinching. "I want safe passage. I want answers. And I want you to remember who you are." The words struck deeper than any blade. He stood abruptly and moved to the window, staring out at the hills. The sun was rising now, painting the land in gold and shadow. It was beautiful and cruel, just like memory. "I am no one," he said. She rose slowly from the bed, the blanket slipping from her shoulders to reveal a simple dress, travel-stained but clean. She stood with quiet strength, the kind earned, not taught. "That is what you tell yourself," she said. "It is not what the land remembers." A sound reached them then, faint but clear. The distant beat of hooves. One, then another. The man's hand moved to his knife without thought. He looked back at her, and in her eyes he saw confirmation of his fear. "They are closer than I thought," she whispered. The hooves grew louder, carried by the morning air. Whoever was coming was not hiding. The old life he had buried was stirring, called forth by a knock in the night and a woman seeking shelter. He barred the window and checked his rifle, his movements calm but swift. When he turned back, she was watching him with something like hope and something like regret. "You should not have come," he said. "I know," she replied. "But now that I am here, will you turn me away?" The hooves thundered closer, shaking the ground, shaking the past loose from its grave. He did not answer her. Instead, he listened, counting, measuring, deciding. The day had only just begun, and already the land was asking him to choose. The sound of the hooves faded before it reached the cabin, but the echo it left behind stayed heavy in the air. The man did not move right away. He listened until the land itself seemed to settle again. Only then did he lower the rifle slightly, though he did not set it down. Outside, the hills rolled quiet and wide, hiding more than they showed. Riders could pass close and still remain unseen. That was how danger survived out here. The woman let out a slow breath she had been holding. "They circle before they strike," she said. "They want to see who comes running." He studied her again, this time not as a stranger, but as a presence tied to the trouble he had tried to leave behind. "You know their ways." "I have watched them long enough," she replied. "Longer than I wanted." He nodded once. He did not ask how long or why. Some answers carried weight that bent the spine. He moved toward the door and checked the latch, then stepped back, his eyes always returning to the window and the ridgeline beyond. "You should eat," he said at last. She looked surprised. "Now? Especially now." He set a pot on the fire, adding water and a handful of dried meat. His movements were practiced and quiet, shaped by years of doing things alone. She watched him closely, as if memorizing each motion. He felt it, that gaze, and it unsettled him more than the distant riders. As the broth warmed, she spoke again. "You left after the winter of smoke." His hand paused. The winter of smoke was not spoken of lightly. It had been a season of loss, of burned camps and broken paths. He did not turn to face her. "Many left. Not like you," she said. "You vanished." He stirred the pot. Vanishing keeps a man breathing. She considered that. It also keeps him empty. He met her eyes then, and for a moment the years fell away. He saw a younger version of himself reflected there, one who believed in belonging, in standing with others against the storm. He looked away first. "Eat," he repeated, handing her a wooden bowl. She accepted it, her fingers brushing his. The contact was brief but real. She sat at the small table near the window, her back straight, her senses alert even as she ate. He remained standing, listening to the land through the walls. After a few mouthfuls, she spoke softly. "They are searching for something." "What?" She hesitated, then said, "Someone." He did not need to ask who. "Why?" She set the bowl down. "Because some things were taken. Because the old paths still matter. Because not everyone forgot." The words stirred old stories, ones whispered by firelight, passed from elder to child. Stories of agreements broken and promises buried. Stories of men who thought land could be owned by ink and paper. "You carry something," he said. "Or, you know where it is." "Yes." "And you came to me." "Yes." "Why?" She looked at him steadily. "Because you once guarded those paths. Because your name was spoken with respect. Because even those who wish you gone still fear what you remember." The fire popped sharply, sending sparks up the chimney. He felt the weight of memory settle over his shoulders like a cloak he had set aside but never truly removed. "Names fade. Stories do not," she replied. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying with it the smell of horses and dust. He went to the window again, scanning the horizon. Nothing moved, but he knew better than to trust stillness. "You should leave before night," he said, her jaw tightened. "I cannot. They will come again. I know." He turned back to her. "Staying here puts you in more danger." She stood, facing him squarely. "So does leaving." They stood in silence, the space between them charged with unspoken truths. He could see now the strength beneath her calm, the resolve shaped by loss and long roads. She was not running blindly. She was choosing. He broke the silence. "Tell me what you carry." She reached into a small leather pouch at her waist and drew out a folded piece of worn cloth. She did not open it. "Not yet," she said. "Not here." "Why?" "Because these walls have ears," she replied, not looking at the walls but at him. "And because once you see it, you cannot turn away." He almost laughed, a short sound without humor. "I already cannot." She nodded, as if that was what she had hoped to hear. As the day wore on, the light shifted, stretching shadows across the floor. He showed her the narrow path behind the cabin that led down toward the creek, a route hidden from the main trail. "If we have to move fast," he said. "This is how." She repeated. He did not correct her. They spent the afternoon preparing in silence. He checked supplies, counted ammunition, packed dried food. She tended to a shallow cut on her arm, cleaning it carefully. When he offered help, she accepted without comment. Their hands worked together easily, as if they had done this before in another life. At dusk, the land grew restless. Birds fell quiet. The wind dropped. He felt it in his bones, the way a storm announces itself before the clouds gather. "They will come tonight," she said. "Yes. How many?" "Enough." She looked toward the hills. "They believe fear will loosen tongues. It often does. But not yours." He met her gaze. "Nor yours." The first sound came just after dark. A shout carried faintly through the trees, then another. Torches flared in the distance, small points of light moving with purpose. The man extinguished the cabin fire, plunging the room into shadow. Moonlight slipped through the cracks, pale and watchful. She stood beside him, her breath steady. "If they find this place," she whispered, "they will not leave it standing. I know, and you, I know." He placed a hand on her shoulder, a silent signal. Together they moved toward the back of the cabin, toward the hidden path. But before they could step outside, a knock struck the front door, loud and deliberate. "Open up," a voice called. "We know you are in there." The man felt the old fire stir, the one he had buried beneath years of solitude. He did not answer. He lifted the rifle, his eyes narrowing. The knock came again, harder. Wood groaned. The woman's hand closed around the folded cloth in her pouch. "Last chance," the voice said. The man leaned close to her and spoke so softly only she could hear. "Whatever happens," he said, "do not let them take it." She nodded once, her eyes fierce. The door shuddered under the next blow, and the night held its breath. The first plank cracked but did not break. The door held, just barely, the old wood groaning like it remembered other hands, other threats. The man did not rush forward. He waited, counting breaths, listening to the rhythm of those outside. Panic made men careless. He had survived by letting others make the first mistake. "Search the sides," another voice called. He might try the back. The woman stiffened. He felt it through the air between them. He motioned for her to stay low, then moved toward the narrow window near the floor. Shadows crossed the moonlight outside, slow and confident. These were not drifters. They moved with intent, with the belief that the land belonged to them. A third voice rose, closer now. "You have something that does not belong to you. Hand it over, and we leave." The man almost answered, then stopped himself. Silence had power. Silence made men doubt what they thought they knew. The woman leaned close, her voice barely more than breath. "They followed me from the river crossing. They lost 2 days there. That made them angry." He nodded slightly. Anger made men loud. Loud men forgot the land listened too. A hard blow struck the door again. This time the latch splintered. Wood fell inward. Cold air rushed through the opening, carrying the smell of sweat, leather, and smoke. A lantern swung into view, its yellow light cutting through the dark. "There," someone said. "I see movement." The man raised the rifle but did not fire. A shot would echo, draw more trouble. Instead, he stepped back into the shadows, pulling the woman with him toward the rear wall. Her heart beat fast, but her step stayed quiet. She trusted him. That trust weighed heavy. The door gave way fully, crashing open. 2 men entered, boots heavy, eyes scanning. Their coats were long and dust-stained. Guns hung at their sides, but their hands stayed free, ready. "Place is empty," one said. "Check again." They moved deeper into the cabin, kicking at the table, peering into corners. One lifted the blanket from the bed, sneering. "Looks like someone left in a hurry." Outside, more men gathered, their shapes shifting in the firelight. The leader stepped in last. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his face lined by sun and confidence. His eyes moved slowly, missing nothing. "He is here," the leader said calmly. "He always stays close to what he cares about." The man felt the words strike. He had cared about nothing for years. Or so he told himself. A boot scraped near the back wall. The woman's breath caught. The man acted then, swift and precise. He struck the lantern from the nearest hand, plunging the room into sudden darkness. Shouts followed. In the confusion, he pushed the loose panel aside and guided her through the narrow opening into the night. They moved fast, down the hidden path, the creek whispering below. Behind them, curses filled the air. A shot rang out, wild and blind, cracking against the trees. The woman stumbled once, and he caught her without breaking stride. They reached the creek and followed it downstream, water splashing softly around their ankles. Moonlight fractured across the surface, hiding their movement. He knew this stretch well, every stone, every bend. They did not stop until the sounds behind them faded. Only then did he pull them into the cover of thick brush. Both of them crouched, breathing hard. "They will track us," she whispered. "Yes, you know how." "Yes." She looked at him, her face pale in the moonlight. "Then why run?" He considered his answer. "Because sometimes you let the hunter think he leads." They waited. Time stretched thin. An owl called somewhere above. The creek kept moving, uncaring. After a long while, she spoke again. They were not like this before. No. They used to listen when elders spoke. "Power deafens," he said. She nodded. "They came to our camps with paper and promises. When those failed, they came with guns." He did not interrupt. Her story needed space. "They are searching for the marker stones," she continued, "the ones that show where the old agreements were made. If they destroy them, the land becomes only land to them. No memory. No witness." The words settled deep. He had stood at those stones once, as a younger man, listening as elders traced lines in the dust, explaining balance, respect, shared ground. "You carry proof," he said. "Yes, a map drawn by hands that remember. And they want it. They want it gone." A shout echoed faintly upstream. The search had begun. "We cannot stay here," he said. They moved again, climbing toward higher ground where rock replaced soil. Tracking would be harder there. As they climbed, his thoughts turned inward to the life he had chosen and the one now knocking again at his door. At a narrow ledge overlooking the valley, they paused. Fires burned below, scattered like fallen stars. The search spread wide. She looked down at them, her face hard. "They will not stop. No. Even if they lose the map. No." She turned to him. "Then why protect it?" He met her gaze. "Because some things must be remembered, even if remembering costs." She studied him, as if weighing his words against her own doubts. "You sound like the man they spoke of." He looked away. "That man is tired. Tired men still choose." Below, a voice rose in anger. A horse whinnied. The tension coiled tighter. They found shelter in a shallow cave as dawn neared. The sky lightened, washing the land in gray. He built no fire. Smoke would betray them. They sat close, sharing warmth. She finally unfolded the cloth. Inside lay a thin piece of bark etched with careful lines and symbols. It was old, fragile, yet clear. He recognized the markings, the language of paths and promises. "You see now," she said. "Yes, you cannot give it back. No. You cannot destroy it? No. Then you are part of this." He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the decision was there. "I suppose I am." They rested in turns, one always watching. As the sun rose higher, the search below shifted. Men argued. Orders changed. The leader's voice carried, sharp with frustration. "They will widen the net," she said. "Yes." "And others will hear." "Yes." She wrapped the cloth again, securing it close to her. "If we reach the old canyon, we can hide among the ruins. Many paths lead there. Not all are known." He smiled faintly. "I know a few." They waited until the light softened, then moved once more, slipping through the land like ghosts. Each step carried them deeper into the conflict he had tried to escape. Behind them, the men regrouped, their resolve hardening. Ahead lay ground marked by memory and danger. As they walked, the woman spoke of her people, of elders who refused to leave, of children taught to listen to the earth even as machines roared closer. He listened, the story stitching something torn inside him. By midday, the heat pressed down. They rested beneath a stand of juniper. He watched the horizon, senses stretched. "You could still leave me," she said quietly. "You know the land better alone." He shook his head. Leaving you would not bring peace. She looked at him, understanding passing between them without words. Far off, dust rose again. The chase was not over. It was only beginning. The land grew rougher as they moved deeper toward the old canyon. The ground split into stone and shadow, narrow paths winding between towering rock walls that caught the wind and twisted it into low moans. Every sound felt louder here, every movement watched. The man slowed his pace, reading signs only he seemed to notice. A bent branch, a scuffed stone, the faint mark of a boot where none should be. "They are closer," he said quietly. The woman nodded. She had felt it too, the pressure at her back, the sense of being pulled towards something inevitable. Still, she did not falter. Her step stayed steady, her grip firm on the pouch at her side. As the sun dipped lower, the canyon opened into a wide basin scattered with the remains of old dwellings. Stone walls half fallen, fire pits filled with sand. This place carried the weight of many lives, many endings and beginnings layered together. The air felt different here, thicker, as if the past itself lingered. "They will hesitate here," she said. "Some of them fear this ground." "Fear fades when greed speaks louder," he replied. They took shelter among the ruins, moving through them like shadows. From a high ledge, he scanned the approaches. Dust rose in the distance again. The men had not given up. If anything, their movements had grown sharper, more organized. As night fell, torches appeared at the edges of the basin. Not many yet, but enough. The leader's voice carried faintly, giving orders, spreading his men wide to close every path. "They mean to trap us," she said. "Yes." Her shoulders tensed. "Then this ends here." "Not yet." He guided her toward a narrow passage between two rock faces, barely wide enough for one person. "This leads to the upper rim," he said. "From there the land favors those who know it." They moved through the passage just as voices grew louder behind them. A shout echoed as one of the men spotted movement among the ruins. The search tightened. At the rim, the wind struck hard, cold and sharp. Below them, the basin glowed with scattered firelight. Above, the sky stretched wide, filled with stars. For a moment, the world felt balanced on a knife edge. She stood beside him, looking out. "If we make it through this," she said softly, "the elders will hear. The stones will stand." He did not answer right away. He was watching the men below, counting, measuring. "They will not let us walk away. I know." A horn sounded from below, low and urgent. The men were moving in unison now, climbing, cutting off roots. The leader stepped into a patch of firelight, his face hard with certainty. "He believes he has already won," the woman said. "That belief makes men blind." They moved along the rim, staying low, using rock and shadow. More torches flared as the net closed. A shot cracked the night, striking stone near them, sparks flying. The woman flinched but kept moving. At a narrow bridge of rock spanning a deep drop, he stopped. The path beyond twisted sharply, hidden from view. "Once we cross," he said, "there is no turning back." She met his gaze. "I crossed that line the night I came to your door." They crossed together, steps light, hearts pounding. Behind them, shouts rose as the men realized their route. More shots rang out, echoing through the canyon like thunder. They reached the far side and slipped into the twisting path beyond. The rock closed around them, swallowing sound. For a moment, there was only their breathing and the rush of blood in their ears. They did not stop until the path opened again into a hidden valley, green and quiet, fed by a spring that glimmered faintly in the moonlight. The man sank to one knee, catching his breath. The woman knelt beside him. "This place," she whispered. "It was spoken of. It still listens," he said. They were safe for the moment, but not free. He knew the men would search every corner by dawn. Still, the valley gave them something precious, time. As they rested, she spoke of what might come after. of councils gathered, of voices raised not in anger but in unity, of children learning the old stories without fear. Her words painted a future that felt almost close enough to touch. He listened, and for the first time in many years, he allowed himself to imagine standing among others again, not as a ghost, but as a man. A sound interrupted the moment. A distant echo, faint but clear, a horn answering another. The men were regrouping, circling wide. They found another way, she said. Yes, he rose, resolve settling over him like armor. When they come, he said, they will expect us to run, and we will not, she replied. They prepared quietly. He positioned himself where the path narrowed. She secured the pouch, then took her place beside him, not behind. Her presence steadied him. As the first light of dawn touched the valley, shadows moved along the ridges. The men emerged, cautious now, aware they were on ground that did not welcome them. The leader stepped forward, his voice carrying. It does not have to end badly, he called. Give us what you carry, and you walk away. The woman stood tall. You do not understand what you ask. I understand enough, he replied. The world is changing. You cannot stop it. The man felt the old fire rise again, not wild now, but focused. He spoke, his voice calm and clear. Change that forgets its roots breaks. The leader laughed, but there was strain in it. Old words, old truths. The men shifted, uneasy. Some looked at the ground, at the stones beneath their feet. The tension stretched, tight as a drawn bow. Birds lifted suddenly from the trees, sensing what was coming. The woman reached for his hand, gripping it once firm. In that moment, everything they had lost and everything they hoped for met. Whatever happened next would shape more than their own fate. The land waited, the past watching, the future holding its breath. The valley held its silence as the first light spread across the stones. The leader stood still, measuring the man and the woman before him as if weighing more than just the moment. The wind moved through the grass, carrying the faint sound of water from the spring. It felt like the land itself was listening, waiting to see who would speak with truth and who would speak with force. The man lowered his rifle first. He did it slowly, openly, not as surrender but as choice. The movement drew murmurs from the men behind the leader. Some shifted their feet. Others tightened their grips. The leader raised a hand, stopping them. You talk like the land belongs to memory, the leader said. But memory does not stop progress. The woman stepped forward then, her voice calm but firm. Progress that erases people is not progress. It is theft dressed in fine words. She reached into her pouch and held the wrapped cloth out, not toward the leader, but toward the light of the rising sun. This does not threaten you, she said. It only reminds you that promises were made. The leader hesitated. That hesitation mattered. It gave space for something long buried to surface. One of the men behind him spoke, quieter than the rest. My grandfather talked about places like this, he said. Said they were meant to be shared. Another nodded slowly. Mine too. The leader turned sharply, but the certainty he carried had cracked. He looked back at the man. You disappeared, he said. You could have stayed out of this. I tried, the man replied. But some things call you home. The leader's eyes flicked to the ruins, to the stones worn smooth by time. The tension in his shoulders eased, just a little. If I walk away, he said, others will come. Then they will hear the same truth, the woman said. And next time, more voices will speak it. Silence fell again, deeper this time. The leader looked at his men, really looked at them. Not all met his gaze. Some stared at the ground, some at the valley. Finally, he exhaled. We leave, he said. Not because we are beaten, because this ground does not want us. No one argued. The men turned back one by one, torches unlit now. They stepped slower than when they came. The sound of hooves faded into the distance, not chased by fear but by thought. When they were gone, the The woman sank to her knees, the weight of it all catching up to her. The man knelt beside her, steadying her shoulders. "It is done," he said quietly. "It has begun," she corrected and smiled. They stayed in the valley until the sun climbed high. Then they traveled together toward the nearest settlement, walking openly now, no longer hiding. Along the way, they were joined by others. Elders who recognized the markings on the map. Young ones who listened closely. Word traveled fast when carried with purpose. At the gathering, the cloth was unwrapped and the map laid out where all could see. Stories followed. Not shouted, not argued, but spoken carefully, with respect. The marker stones were named. Witnesses stepped forward. Even those who once doubted listened. The man stood at the edge at first, content to watch. But the woman called him forward. "You remember more than you think," she said. He spoke then slowly, telling of winters long past, of agreements sealed not with ink but with trust. His voice did not waver. As he spoke, he felt something lift from him, a burden carried too long alone. Days passed. Messengers came and went. The land grew quieter, not empty, but settled. The threat did not vanish entirely, but it lost its teeth. Boundaries were redrawn with care. The stones were protected. The old paths reopened, not just across the land, but between people. One evening, as the sun dipped low, the woman sat beside him near a fire. Laughter drifted from nearby. Children chased each other through the dust. "You could leave again," she said softly. "No one would stop you." He looked around at the faces, at the land glowing warm in the fading light. "I do not want to." She nodded, understanding. "Neither do I." They built a small home near the edge of the valley, close enough to hear the spring at night. It was simple, sturdy, shared. The man found peace in routine, in teaching young ones how to read the land. The woman traveled at times, carrying stories forward, always returning. In time, the land healed in its way. So did they. On quiet mornings, the man would wake to the sound of wind moving through the grass and the warmth beside him. He would remember the night he thought he had woken alone and smile at how wrong he had been. Some rewards came not as payment, but as purpose. And some awakenings changed everything.